Okay. How is everybody doing? All good? Excited? We are getting to the end of the day, and I'm going to go a little bit quiet. I'm going to be a little bit relaxed. After the talk of Zachary, I don't have any story to tell you. It's going to be a little bit disappointing, but if you are ready for some BS, this is also a talk for that. So the talk is going to be about Fullstack Serverless, and I didn't make up this concept. This is a concept that few people is using, and it's all around serverless. So let's get into it. First thing will be to try to make you pronounce my name correctly. Gerard Sans. Gerard Sans. Gerard Sans. Gerard Sans. Gerard Sans. Okay? Yes, you can do it. I learned some Chinese. Ni hao. Ni hao ma. Che che. Che 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 che. Okay. Very good. I'm a developer advocate at AWS. Most people don't know what is a developer advocate. I also don't know, so we are all in the same page here. Some people think that I just go around traveling and giving talks and trainings, and actually I'm in this job for the traveling, of course. Traveling, the food, technology. Look at this. So this is not my first talk. I don't know if you have seen this map before, but yeah, I've been traveling, I've been busy. This is the work of 4 years, full-time. So before that, I was doing a job like you do, probably, going to the office 9 to 5. And one day I decided that I wanted to do something different. And you could also take that decision any day. You could say like, okay, I'm done. I was a little bit disappointed. I was working for a SIP consultancy, and I don't recommend it. My soul was crushed as a developer. I was not excited. I was sad. And I took a 2-year gap. So I just left my laptop, went to live to Brazil with my girlfriend, and just leave it there for a while. And when I came back, I discovered Angular. And somehow I got excited again. And now I'm super hyped. Okay. Just a warning, this is only my views. Because I work for a big corporate, this can be a little bit tricky sometimes. So I don't want you to go tomorrow to the press and said something that I said today during this talk. These are only my views. This is just a warning. So it's going to get mad now because now I'm free of all these restrictions. So let's start with a timeline. I'm going to talk about serverless. So when serverless was released, the concept has been around for a while, but the first commercial product was released in 2014. And this is AWS Lambda. And this is the first commercial offering. And we are going to cover what it means and how we can use it today. But this is just a little bit of a history. If you think about this is not a long time ago. This is only 2014. Just a year later, there's the first open source framework that allows you to build on top of this AWS serverless platform. And this is serverless framework. Today, you can use serverless framework and build for any of the different cloud providers, which is pretty cool. In 2016, we get Google Cloud Functions. So this is the first offering from Google. So you can see that major companies are getting into serverless. Of course, very close, it's Microsoft. Microsoft Azure Functions are released the same year. And probably we can also mention that we are in Alibaba Innovation Center. Have you realized that they also invest heavily in cloud and serverless? So this is a big shift. We are going through this big change. And I don't want you to miss that. So I'm going to tell you exactly why it's important that you start looking into it. 2017, we are getting closer. This is Firebase Functions. And this is exactly running these functions as a result of an event on Firebase. So that will allow you to use the Google Cloud Functions with Firebase. In AWS, we also have a new framework, which is specialized on AWS infrastructure, and that's AWS SAM CLI. So we can see that there's more tooling developed, and just the last one, I left the best for the last. This is AWS Amplify CLI. And this is my team, so I work for AWS Amplify, and we are building some awesome tools that I want to share with you. So what's the evolution? And the evolution to serverless, it's not without problems. So here we have the monolith. And most of you are still in this stage, which is not great news. What are you doing still building on the monolith? Maybe you are using Node. Maybe you are using Python. Maybe you are using .NET, Java. That's the monolith. In internet years, this is more than 10 years ago. This is too far away. So what's next? The next architecture is microservices. And this is an improvement from the monolith, and it solves few problems with scalability, also maintenance, and also what is the management of infrastructure. We can also see the concept of containers, and this will encapsulate the features in some kind of a module that will make these pieces interchangeable. And you could build, using these microservices, faster and more reliable. So what's next? Well, the next paradigm is using functions and event-driven architectures. And that will give us what is the concept of serverless. This concept is still shifting. You will see different architectures using similar approaches. You can see sometimes a mix of technologies and paradigms, but let's call serverless the use of these serverless functions. If you are not familiar with serverless, probably the best way to familiarize with this concept is comparing to the old paradigm. And maybe you will be familiar with some of these differences. So if we are using a traditional approach, which will be the monolith, you will have a custom-built architecture, which is hard to custom. It will be fragile. In terms of scalability, you will face some trouble, some struggles, and you probably won't know until it happens. Another problem of this architecture is that it has a fixed capacity. You need to preview or forecast what will be the usage. So imagine you are creating a new service, and of course you want it to be successful, but you don't know how much successful will be. And you will provision some servers, you will buy some hardware, or maybe pay some contracts with a provider, and maybe it won't be enough. The day you do the release, maybe you will face some issues, and you will have to scale up that architecture that you planned for. So that comes with a little bit of a risk. Another problem with this approach is that it has a fixed cost. When you pay a provider for a certain amount of hardware, it will be on a contract for a few years, and that will be on a fixed cost. And you don't know if you are going to utilize that investment, because you don't know if your service will be as successful as you have planned for. Another problem is that it's slow. Because it's custom-made, the development will be slower than other options. With serverless, you are targeting some of these issues, so we get some benefits from that. So we have standard blocks that we can use. We can reuse these for different solutions. We also have an easy way to connect these pieces, and this comes with the event-driven architecture. A very interesting concept is that we have elastic capacity. So that means that if nobody's using your service, you are not paying for it, which is really interesting. Imagine you are creating a new service that could be as popular as Uber, and the moment you put that service live, if you have no users, you won't pay for them. You won't pay for the system to be live. The moment that there's a user using the system, you only pay for that usage, which is really interesting for startups or any company. And then you have this agile point, which you can build faster and also scale to limits that you were not able to do before. So let me rate these two models. This is 2 stars for the traditional approach. And of course, I'm going to give 3 stars. I hope you have like 3 stars model. I don't know if you use 5 or 10 in China. I'm going to use 2 stars and 3 stars. Very good. So how is that on an actual example? So you can see how that works. On a traditional development, you will see that all of the pieces are on the back end. And this is, for example, you have some logic that it's on the server side. You have some authentication. You also have some pieces that will be your business logic and also your data. If we split that and we move into a serverless solution, you will see that all of these pieces are being now broken down. And you are not responsible for those pieces anymore. Another interesting approach is that now we can use all of these pieces for different solutions. And we don't need to know the details. So other developers can just build using these new functions, and they actually can develop those independently. I wanted to show an actual example using AWS. And this is an example application that you can explore later, is WildRide's web app. So this is how a web app will look by using serverless. Here at the top, we have, of course, all the static assets, which are in a web application, all the CSS, HTML, JavaScript, etc. And that will be accessing AWS Amplify. Another bit that is very common for all kinds of applications is authentication. And in AWS, we use AWS Cognito. And that will be some piece that you can use and in exchange in any application, which is really powerful. The last bit that I want to cover is the APIs. So whenever the application needs to go through some APIs to ask for some data, you will go through Amazon API Gateway. That will trigger a Lambda. And finally, we will get into the data source. So that's more or less the architecture that I'm advocating for. And that should be a surprise for you. I'm going to use these cat pictures a lot. I hope they are popular within you. So what is serverless? Well, there are a couple of definitions that I'm going to use. The first one is these third-party cloud services. And this is a little bit different from the definition that a lot of people is using. So you need to start thinking that when you are using serverless, it's not only cloud functions. It's also third-party services, like authentication. Of course, the main piece on any serverless architecture will be this event-driven nature. So you can run these functions after an event has been triggered in your app. And that will make it really powerful. So what are the main pieces of this serverless architecture? Well, the main thing that we need to take into account, and I use this rubber duck, is that you don't have any servers to manage. And I think for China, which is a really powerful country that it's growing so fast, for startups and probably for yourselves, this is really important because most of us, we don't have experience in backend. But today, you don't have to. You don't have to manage these servers. Also, you don't need to pay when the service is not being used. That means that you can try new ideas, and you don't have to pay for something that is not being used. If it's not successful, you can just turn down the service and go for a new idea. This is also very interesting, which is handling high volumes of usage. Imagine you have a really nice idea, you put it out live, and for some reason you are lucky. And it's very, very popular. If you build your own application, which is using the monolith, how many chances are that this is going to fail? I mean, if I tell you, okay, your app that you released maybe last week, I'm telling you 10 million people is going to go download your app and use it. How certain are you that the application is not going to crash? Okay, no hands. That's what I thought. When you're using serverless, actually it's the opposite. We are using serverless infrastructure that has been used at least since 2014. This is 5 years of AWS using these functions without any problem. This is solid. This is reliable. So you can use that for your own success. The other aspect is this fault tolerance, high availability. I mean, how long do you think it took for the AWS engineers to build, for example, AWS Lambda? You have the manpower or the knowledge to do that to your Node Express solution? I mean, how long is it going to take for you? How long is it going to take for you to take that Java architecture and make it rock solid? That's never going to happen. So I want you to start looking at serverless as the new paradigm. This is something that is coming. It's still not mainstream, but this is the right moment to get into it. And then you can feel like a captain, deciding what you want to do with total freedom. So let's look into the modern tooling. So let's imagine you want to do a Fullstack Serverless. What will be the tooling that you will use? Well, of course, I'm going to introduce AWS Amplify. So how is going to help you? AWS Amplify, it's supporting mobile, native, and web. And you can use this with a full tool set. The first thing that we are going to use is a framework, and that's available for all of the different platforms. Then, of course, developer tools, and we have seen big improvements on this side. So you can run this on different environments like Visual Code and integrate that in your development cycle. There's also support for testing and continuous integration. So that gives you some kind of good environment to develop your solution. Of course, you have access to all of the AWS cloud services. Today, there's more than 156 services that you can use, and you have access to all of that awesome resources by using AWS Amplify. The way it works is very similar to Angular CLI, so you have some command line that you can run and develop your features. So let's see how that looks. I wrote this small diagram. Of course, I'm a developer and I love these diagrams. And this is the whole cycle. So you can use all of these commands to run the new features and put them in the cloud. We have Amplify init to initialize your project. We can run Amplify add to add new features. Of course, we need to deploy these features on the cloud, and we use Amplify push. And then if we want to configure any changes, we use Amplify update. So that's the whole cycle covered in few commands. I guess I don't have to sell you the idea of a CLI. So what are the benefits of using a CLI? The best way to explain the benefits is that the core team of the different AWS services is adopting best practices behind all of these commands. So if, for example, there's a new release, you will get these best practices without having to do anything. I mean, you need to be up to date with the CLI. That's the only thing you have to do. And each AWS service core team member is going to make sure that you're using the best practices. So that's going to be really easy for you in the long term. And we have seen a lot of success with Angular CLI. So this is the same concept. So what are the features that we can use? In AWS Amplify, we call them categories. And we cover a lot of the features that you will need. So we have authorization category. We support REST and GraphQL. Yesterday, we did a 2-hour workshop where we built an application, a full stack serverless application using restaurants theme. You can also do chatbots, analytics, and virtual and augmented reality. So these are a lot of features. Of course, you can do storage, use AWS functions. This is a whole set of features that you can start using. Notifications, hosting, of course. There's also cool features that I just demonstrated yesterday. And these are translation, text-to-speech, transcribe would allow you to speak out commands and process that to run actions in your applications. There's also recognition. So these are all machine learning modules that you can plug in your app. Recognition will use facial recognition on images and video, and you can use the metadata coming back as a result to trigger your logic, and that will be very easy to integrate. Another interesting feature is comprehend, and comprehend will allow you to get metadata from different contexts and use that as well to enrich your applications. So this is probably the first reaction that I get from people. This is too scary, actually. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about massive scale. And this is something that people miss when they use serverless. They only see the feature side, but they don't see the massive scale that we are talking. So let's try to talk about some of the companies using serverless today. These are companies that are using only serverless, and in this case, AWS. We also have familiar brands. I guess these are also familiar to you here in China. And you can think the massive volume that they go through. So when you use serverless, you can grow as much as these companies. And that means in the order of millions of users. So just to give you a couple of examples, AWS Lambda is executing trillions of executions per month. That's one figure to make you think. S3, which is the storage service, goes 1 million requests per second. So this is not going to fail for your little app that you want to release. That's for sure. The good thing is that when you are using any cloud provider, not only AWS, you are using exactly the same services that anybody else in that cloud. So that gives you a lot of resiliency and also peace of mind. So how is the future looking like? Well, in this slide, I want to talk to you about the opportunity. We have seen different moves, and this is a new paradigm. Of course, one thing that I want to share with you is that any technology that we are using today is going to be obsolete in 5 years. It doesn't matter what you are using. Maybe if you are doing research, I mean, we are in a very advanced area. Who is doing research here? Maybe machine learning? No? Robotics? Oh, I'm disappointed now. Nobody's doing cool things? Okay, no worries. So unless you are doing some edge research, the technology that you are using today, it's gone. Believe me, it's gone. It's useless. You talk Angular, in 5 years, we don't know. We don't know what will be there. Probably a more shiny, more resilient Angular. Maybe call a different name. Nobody knows. But one thing that I can tell you is that it will be on the cloud. This is going to be on the cloud. We are in Alibaba Innovation Center. They work with the cloud. And you can imagine the volume that they manage, that it's not possible with any other approach. So better get soon than later. Fullstack Serverless. So what is the concept of Fullstack Serverless? Fullstack means that you can use client and server side. And usually, when you think about serverless, you think server side. But you are probably front-end developers. So what I want to tell you is, as a front-end developer, you can start using this technology, and it won't be as difficult as you think. So this is a big opportunity for you. There's still some things that are not up to other paradigms because it's very early stages. So there's, for example, some missing pieces around integration tests, monitoring, debugging. These are still some pieces that are not 100% finished. There's other things that it can be improved. Sometimes when people go into serverless, they face issues, they have questions, and there could be some things to improve. So I put here a few examples like starter architectures. You can find some today. Easy and fun. Probably sometimes it doesn't get as fun as you would expect. And then also support for full depth cycle. So there's a lot of potential. And I like to use this slide to make you think big, out of the box. This is a cat in the universe playing DJ with a pizza. Can you hold it in your mind? Okay, this is difficult to imagine, but it's a mix of excitement and cool things that can be possible if you can imagine them. And with serverless, you can actually do anything. And if you think about recent examples of technologies, I would say that Uber will be an example of you can achieve with this technology in very short time. And you could be the next people using the cloud to be successful. So if you want to know more, I'm going to propose you few people that you can follow. These are my colleagues, my team members. Ricardo, Nader David, Carl Campbell, and Nikhil. And these are the best resources, actually. So my last call for action will be to try it. And this is a resource that I like to point you. And this is the AWS Serverless Workshops. You can go and see how is that built, see if that fits your knowledge today. Thanks a lot for listening. Cheers. How are we with time? Do I have time to do a demo? Okay, so they tell me that I have 5 minutes to do a demo, so I'm going to show you a few things. These are some demos that I shown yesterday. So the first thing I'm going to show you is a small app that is using facial recognition to find Keanu Reeves in pictures. Okay? So let's imagine we are in a hackathon and you have to build this app for tomorrow. How you will start? This is using facial recognition, and it's also providing some information. You can see there's the eyes, there's the nose, there's the mouth there. I mean, how you would do that? This seems like quite complex, isn't it? Well, I put myself into the task. I use AWS Amplify, and I build this small prototype. Okay? So let's see this. So I have few images there, and I'm going to pick this one. Let's see if it works first. So that's calling an API. I'm using a VPN and the conference Wi-Fi. I mean, maybe it's broken. Oh my God, that's not that slow. Okay, no. Okay, so I can see Keanu Reeves happy. Yes. So just by using an API and running a couple of command line commands, I was able to build this demo application. And it's also giving me the information of the person that was recognized. That means that, for example, if I use some other celebrity, it will also recognize that celebrity for me. So it's not only finding that the face doesn't match with Keanu Reeves, which was my idea, but it's also giving me the information of that particular celebrity. This is just an example of how the services that you use from AWS can bring like really difficult features into your app. How can you use this information? It's up to you. For example, you could imagine building a small mobile app that uses the information from the eyes to, for example, add some sunglasses and maybe make it like a small funny app. That could work. Another demo that I have is using translation and text to speech. Okay, I'm using a text in Spanish. I mean, I'm from Spain. And the first thing I'm going to do is detect the language, see what happens. Okay, it has found that this is Spanish. And I'm going to translate this to Chinese, of course. Maybe that doesn't make any sense for you. It's what we use to learn English. So that's a phrase that we have to repeat when we are kids. I think it's because British people use this like dress, like suits, so they can make those. And we can also use text to speech. So let's hear how this works for AWS.
我的裁缝很有钱。
Is that correct? Yeah? Very good. Let's imagine the same person with 2 coffees.
我的裁缝很有钱。
Maybe Friday, 5 in the afternoon.
我的裁缝很有钱。
Well, it took me just a couple of hours to build this. And I think you get the idea. You get access to a really powerful collection of cloud services, and you can use this to create the new apps for the future. So I hope I have inspired you to look into cloud services. Thanks again. Cheers.